Okay, picture this, a slumbering cosmic entity that, according to myth, is literally sustaining our very reality just by sleeping. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive right into one of the most fascinating and honestly terrifying thought experiments in all of science fiction and cosmic horror. We're asking the big question, what if Azathoth was real? Like, how would the existence of this ultimate veiled mystery actually affect our world as we know it? Let's get into it.
We've got to start with this incredibly eerie quote directly from H.P. Lovecraft's 1931 story, The Whisperer in Darkness. He describes this creator god as the monstrous nuclear chaos beyond angled space. Now, historically, that word nuclear is absolutely fascinating here, because you have to remember, in 1931, atomic energy wasn't really a familiar concept to the public. He wasn't talking about splitting atoms or anything like that. He was using nuclear to mean the literal nucleus of the cosmos, the absolute chaotic swirling center of all existence.
All right, let's move into Section 1, defining the entity, also known as the blind idiot god.
So, Azathoth is famously known across the mythos as the blind idiot god. But why? Well, because it remains in this state of eternal slumber. It creates and sustains our entire universe entirely unconsciously, just by dreaming. That's it. There's no grand design or master plan. And the wildest part? Not only does this entity completely not care about the countless planets and stars and civilizations living inside its dream, it is literally completely unaware that we even exist. Everything we know, everything humanity has ever built, might just be a fleeting subconscious thought of a sleeping giant.
You know, this brilliantly highlights a massive shift from how humanity usually thinks about a creator. We're super familiar with the traditional Abrahamic God, like you'd find in the Bible or the Quran, where you have a conscious, deliberate creator who intentionally formed the universe and actively cares about the people inside it. Lovecraft totally flips that narrative on its head with Azathoth. Instead, we get this entirely unconscious, apathetic, unaware dreamer. No divine plan, just the random, chaotic firing of cosmic synapses.
Which brings us to Section 2, Scenario A, the cosmic slumber.
Here's where things get really dangerous. Even while this thing is dormant, the universe is still at the absolute mercy of Azathoth, simply shifting in its sleep. Some accounts in the lore hold that just a slight subconscious movement from this dreaming god could wipe out entire galaxies in an instant. The very laws of physics that we rely on every single day for stability, they could be turned entirely upside down. Imagine gravity suddenly repelling things instead of attracting them, just because the dreamer tossed and turned. It makes our reality an incredibly fragile and highly unpredictable place to live.
Okay, so let's look at the flip side in Section 3, Scenario B, the Great Awakening.
This is the chilling reality if Azathoth's slumber ever actually ends. You see, unlike a lot of other cosmic monsters, Azathoth wouldn't wake up and start taking over worlds or driving people insane. It's way simpler than that, and honestly, way more definitive. The universe just blinks out of existence. Poof, gone. Because we exist entirely within its dream, the exact second the dreamer opens its eyes, the dream is over. Reality and literally everything inside it just ceases to be.
To kinda wrap our heads around how terrifying this is, there's a really fascinating literary comparison we can make. Some people have compared this exact existential dilemma to the story of the Red King in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Alice might see herself as the main character, the protagonist of her own life, right? But the text heavily implies the Red King is the true dreamer. If he wakes up, Alice just disappears. On a cosmic scale, we are Alice. We are utterly, hopelessly dependent on a sleeping creator just to survive.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. An awakening cosmic god sounds a bit fantastical, right? But what grounds this sense of dread is how closely it actually mirrors real science. The sudden ending of our universe isn't just some horror trope. We know for a fact that Earth will eventually be engulfed when our sun goes supernova. Plus, modern cosmologists theorize that our universe could literally just blink out of existence. Maybe it's the sudden ending of a grand simulation, or a rapid collapse back into a singularity. So the sheer unpredictable suddenness of Azathoth waking up, it's actually a surprisingly scientific, grounded kind of existential threat.
Let's dive a little deeper into the lore with Section 4, Alternative Interpretations, the meta twist.
Because Lovecraft was so famously vague about his monsters, we actually have two wildly competing theories here. We've been talking a lot about the widely accepted blind idiot god theory, the unconscious slumbering dreamer. But there is a completely different interpretation out there that suggests Azathoth isn't a dreamer at all. Instead, this theory claims it's a massive, physical beast residing right at the center of the universe, acting essentially as a king of gods.
Think of it like a Zeus or Jupiter figure, actively ruling over a chaotic pantheon rather than just accidentally imagining one. And this leads us to an absolutely mind-bending meta-twist. Some theorists argue that by reading the Cthulhu mythos, thinking about it, and dreaming about this world Lovecraft created, we, as the audience, are the ones actually bringing it to life. If the mythos only exists within the dream of Azathoth, and you are the ones sitting there envisioning the mythos right now, then you are Azathoth. You are the dreamer sustaining this reality. By that logic, the entity definitely exists, simply because you're thinking about it right this second. Pretty wild, right?
But hey, let's jump back to our original timeline for a second. What actually happens immediately after this giant god wakes up and ends our universe? Well, as our source material humorously points out, after an absolute eternity of sleeping, Azathoth would probably need a serious bathroom break. It would essentially be a cosmic thanks for all the fish, immediately followed by the longest, most satisfying pee in all of history. You gotta have a little bit of cosmic absurdity in there to balance out the crushing existential dread, right?
So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. If you knew, definitively, that your entire reality was nothing more than a fragile cosmic dream, just a fleeting subconscious thought of a sleeping giant that could snap awake at any given second, how would that change the way you live today? Seriously, what would you do if Azathoth was real? Keep searching for your own answers.